Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to ChannelBK. My name is Brian and welcome to another list. Top 20 albums of 2015. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate. And if you don't celebrate anything, I hope you're having a great Friday. And again, top albums of the year. Super excited. We got some great albums. I do have two honorable mentions, the Thundercat album and the Mick Jenkins EP, Waves. Only reason why I didn't include both of them, Thundercat I actually did include, but I think after kind of realizing it is a mini album, and Mick Jenkins released that project as an EP, said so himself, so I'm going to leave those two off the list, but those are definitely honorable mentions. So without further ado, here we go. At number 20, Joey Badass with Badass or Before the Money. I was really excited to hear this project, mainly because Joey Badass was somebody, I wasn't like, oh my god, Joey Badass, but I really liked his first project. His second project was okay, and he had some great features here and there, and this project is a great debut for the rapper. I love sort of how he's going for that old school New York sound, but he's adding his own element to it. So many great tracks on here, Christ Conscious, Like Me, and so many other tracks. Paper Trails as well. This was a very consistent album to sort of debut. And at number 19, we go to some more folk music with I Love You Honeybear by Father John Misty. This was an album that when I first heard about Father John Misty, I was really interested in seeing what he was going to do, and I really like his songwriting. His instrumentation is great. I love his storytelling as well, and definitely a really great mixture of folk music with his sensibilities as an artist as well. 18, we get, in my opinion, the real interesting breakup or heartbreak album, I should say, from Bjork, Volny Kira. Definitely a great art pop record. Bjork's vocals are just top notch, and musically I was just so interested. So many great strings and just all the weird instrumentation from Arca, who was the main collaborator on this album. And it was in a way such a great return for Bjork, because I believe her last album came out a few years ago, and a great introduction for someone like me who has finally slowly started getting into her old stuff, so this was a great album. 17, Tame Impala, Currents. Definitely such a great, just indie rock, psychedelic rock album. Again, I didn't love it as much as their last album, but I still really enjoyed it. I thought just the sounds were so great, and it was such a polished record, but with some edges when it needed to be. 16 was Every Hero Needs a Villain, Czarface. Great boom bap rap, great lyrics, great features, great sort of devices with comic books and nerd culture and all this sort of stuff. So I could say, has still hold up. I loved it. 15 is the fun, dancey, and just infectious Rae Jepsen album, Emotion. Man, oh man, was I in love with this album. So many great tracks that gave me such great feelings. Songwriting was great, and Carly really returned from sort of her one-hit wonder, two-hit wonder fame with such a great follow-up. But at number 14, I think the album that slightly beat it a little bit was Art Angels by Grimes. Again, I've said in that review, even though there were certain parts to it I was meh with, as a complete project, I was so impressed by the consistency and the feel, and Grimes' sort of thought process and her focus was so great on here. And just listening to it again and again, little things I recognize here and there, and it was just such a great record, and definitely such an opposite feel to what Grimes has kind of been known for doing for a while, but still adding in that Grimes-ness to it. Sound in Color follows it up, Alabama Shakes, at number 13, and just great southern rock, such great Americana rock, and just great feelings, and Britney's vocals are just unbelievable as a group. And it was, again, another record where hearing about Alabama Shakes and sort of listening to a couple of their songs, I'm like, okay, I like what they do, but I'm not necessarily gonna follow what they do, but this record really gave me a big jolt. And speaking of somebody that I kind of stopped caring about for a while, number 12, Tetsuo and Youth, Lupe Fiasco. I actually debated putting this on the list, not because I hated it, because I obviously gave it a very high review. But it just kind of fell through with me in a lot of ways with certain things about it. I think it kind of overburdened me as I listened to it more and more after the review, but still, I thought it was still a great album. I thought Lupe had so much to say, and production-wise, it was great, and it had such a great feel and consistency with the sound. At number 11, Universal Themes by Kil Moon. folk rock at its best, indie rock at its best, and as sort of a project following up Benji, it's very different, and sort of the parallels though that it draws is really interesting too. Again, first time listening to it, I didn't know how to feel because there were certain elements I wasn't a fan of, especially the electric elements, but just as, again, a follow-up to Benji, I think there were so many great little things and breakdowns that he had, and just Mark Kozelek as a songwriter and as a singer is just so raw and vivid, and his storytelling is just incredible. We're in the top 10, we're in the top 10, so exciting. And we open it with an album that needs no introduction with its title, the epic Kamasi Washington. Man, this album was ambitious, and the songwriting and the structures and the progressions and everything was just breathtaking, and Kamasi really just blew up this year with this record, and it's just so great. How did it not get nominated for any Grammys in the jazz category? How do I fucking know? That is retarded. But at number 9, we got The Powers That Be by Death Grips. Yes, I am obviously considering this an album because it did come out this year, and it is an album. It's just a double album. The first part came out last year, but as sort of a companion piece where the first one's very weird and vivid, and then sort of the second part is hard-hitting, loud, and aggressive. It's such a weird sort of double album, and I think as a project, this is to me one of the strongest Death Grips has been since something maybe like The Money Store, which I really loved as well. And just as a complete project, it sounded focused, and I rarely found myself really hating anything on it. It's just great. At number 8, In Color by Jamiexx. I know this was sort of a divisive album for some people. I know some people didn't love it as much as the critics. Some people was like, this is boring. But for me, I love the atmosphere of it. It was a very different take on sort of dance music, at least for me. And I don't mean like different take in like an experimental way, because vocals I thought were great, and I just thought the weird samplings were really interesting, and I thought there were so many different flavors that really put me in a place. And I think this is a very interesting sonic album and a very interesting mood album too. And at number 7, The World is a Beautiful Place and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die. Harmlessness. Great emo record, pop punk record, sort of post-rock record as well. And when I first heard of the band, I was very much intrigued to hear what the sound was going to be, and songwriting wise and lyrically and musically, all that sort of stuff together, and vocally as well. It just sort of pulled on all those pop punk and emo things that I loved so much when I was a youth. And now listening to this record, I thought it was just well done, and it's still a record I very much go back and listen to a lot of the tracks. At number 6, we got White Men Are Black Men Too by Young Fathers. Again, another group that I've heard about for a little bit, and I was finally happy to listen to them. And as a record, I was so intrigued. It's kind of a weird rap, pop, R&B style album, but it works. I think vocally it's haunting, rap-wise it's great as well, and just structurally it's such a lo-fi record, and it really brings out a lot of the best qualities of the group and the qualities of what this album is about. Some of my favorite tracks on here were the very empowering and very haunting sort of songs. Something like Shame I thought was great, Sirens, but it was definitely something that when I first listened to it, I was so surprised with how much I liked it, because it was kind of rare this year where I grabbed onto something new and was like, oh my god. Number 5, A Head Full of Dreams, Coldplay. Oh no, Brian, you loved the Coldplay album. How dare you, you monster. Yes, I did. Sorry, not sorry. It's an album that obviously it just came out late, so I've still been listening to it a bunch, but following up Ghost Stories, I thought it's just such a great transition, and musically I loved it, and even songwriting-wise, I think for the most part, I really dug what Coldplay was doing, and it just, I don't think it was something that lived up to my super high expectations, because I didn't really have them. But again, sort of following up the somberness of Ghost Stories, I thought this was a great follow-up. At number 4, we got We Cool, Jeff Rosenstock. Talk about pop punk records that just blew me away this year. Oh my god. This, in a year where I was sad to see no Japan Droids, Jeff Rosenstock filled that gap. As well as Blink-182, all that stuff happening, Jeff Rosenstock had me. I love you, Jeff. I love you so much. Just fist-pumping tracks, funny, clever, smart, but also kind of emotional and deep, and just it's just music that you're like loving so much. It's just great rock music, and just the spirit and energy is great. And that spirit and energy follows into my number 3 favorite album of the year, Painted Shut by Hop Along. This kind of fought for my number 2 spot, very much so. Vocally, didn't hear anything like it. It's just so raw, and lyrically too. Some of the stories told on this are just so incredible, and the indie rock is so great and so well put together, and it's just, it makes for such a complete album where, again, I could not really find that many tracks on here. I pretty much enjoyed every single track on this whole entire album, especially with my number 2 album, which was flip-flopped with this a bunch of times. Sufjan Stevens, Carrie and Lowell, heartbreaking record, but also uplifting record. Sufjan as a songwriter and as a musician and sort of putting it all together was absolutely incredible. And I think something like Sun Kil Moon, which was another one of my favorite albums, and something like this, it kind of draws from the same thread. It goes in 2 different directions, and I think this one is a little bit more obviously indie. It has more synthesizers. It has more of sort of that indie-ness feel. But never hearing of him, which kind of disappointed me because he's a hometown boy. I love this album, and the second with that Death with Dignity started, I knew I was in for something that was quite beautiful. And just to this day, you get so much emotion from that album. Every time I listen, I'm just like, this is incredible. But number 1, an album I have not stopped listening to. It's probably my most played album ever now. And just every track on here is just so well thought out, complex. The stories, it's so surface level, so deep, so inventive, so uninventive with pulling from older influences. The features were perfect, and just as a project that so many people were waiting for, I think it was something that definitely lived up to all the hype. And as time grew on and on and on, it became something that just became more masterful to me. And thinking about it so differently now, and it's so interesting and great, and that is To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick Lamar. I think it was kind of simple for many people. Obviously, it's one of the 4 albums I think that came out this year where I think you can interchange them for best album of the year and people won't be surprised, but I think it has held up. So is your number 1 To Pimp a Butterfly as well? But if not, are some of these albums in your top 10 or 20 or whatever? Leave that all in the comments below. If you liked, please like and please subscribe, because I got one more list coming up until the last list of the year. Expect at least some stuff. But for now, I hope you guys, again, like I said, have a great holiday, or just have a great Friday or weekend or whatever, time off. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for tuning in to ChannelBK. Peace out, guys.